Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with a special guest. You can already see him. He's standing. He's right there, right next to me, Mr. John McKie. Did I just butcher the last name?
No, you got it right.
I
That's
got it
good.
right. Thank you.
All good.
First of all, John, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. This has been a long time coming. I apologize. I've just been dealing with life and everything, but I'm glad we're here. You gotta love technology, as we are both on two very different parts of the world. I'm over here in Seattle, Washington. John, where are you at this moment?
I'm in South London, England. So sort of 10, 15 minutes from Brixton, where,
Wow.
Bob Marley's company was in London, but Camberwell. So yeah, Southeast London.
Okay. Born and raised?
I'm from Glasgow, Scotland. So yeah, not that far from where Sheena Easton's from, if that is a good reference
Okay.
point for you.
Okay. That I can understand.
Yeah, I thought you might get that. Yeah.
Well, man, we're here to talk about your book. We have it down here, down visible here in the center. Prince, A Sign of the Times. And I got to tell you, first of all, I got to say thank you to your publisher for allowing me to read the book and really take it in, man. Anytime I'm a reader, period. But when the Prince books come through, you would think that I was a speed reader or something, because I'm just, you just drop everything and you blaze through it. What I tried to do with your book, though, I wanted to pace myself because I didn't want to go through it super fast, but because it's just easy, because I love the subject one, so I'm all into it. But I wanted to kind of live with it, so it took me. I think I paced myself for about a week and a half, just kind of really slowly read. Let me sit down,
Yeah.
that type of thing, and really get into it. And I will say this: I enjoyed the book very much. Read a lot of Prince books over the years, and I want to say I enjoyed it. I felt like what would I say? To me, the book comes out in an interesting time in the Prince sort of fandom or what have you. Coming out of, I don't know how you feel about this, but coming out of sort of the documentary not
Mm,
coming out, and maybe some of the things that I think were being discussed in that, it was interesting to read this book, and it didn't feel like it was filtered to sort of gloss over things. It doesn't feel like it's like trying to be TMZ or anything either, but uh, but it definitely, like, there was some stuff in there. I was like, I kind of remember hearing about that, but just I kind of forgot about it. But when you put it all in sort of the timeline and sort of the narrative that you're using, I was like, yeah, this is Prince is super fascinating.
mm.
And there's stuff that I love, and there's at my age, as I was kind of questioning, like, God, I remember that. I didn't think much about that at the time, but now I'm like, it's a little out there, Prince. But I say all that to say, man, it's the good, bad, and I'm not gonna say the ugly. It's just you just kind of really showed him as a human being.
That was the plan, Michael. To be totally honest with you, was that I wrote a feature on the 30th anniversary signing of the Times for the BBC website, and I
Okay.
just basically the BBC head of music is a massive Prince fan, Mark Savage, and I met him in a pub, and I went, someone should write an article about how the guy who splits up with the band that he's had the most success, who splits up with the woman that he was living with, creates this masterpiece, and everyone. Well, a lot of people, I know people that are watching your podcast don't think of him like this, but a lot of people think of him as the guy with the purple jacket and the motorbike,
Right. Yeah, right.
and it, the Take Me
Yeah.
With You, When Doves Cry, Let's Go Crazy, Purple Rain guy. And, of course, that was his greatest commercial success. But I think a lot of fans, and I do too, think of him as the Sign of the Times guy in terms of the high watermark of his artistic achievement. And so
Mm.
I wrote this feature for the BBC, and it was 2017. And I finished it, and people were really nice about it. And people were nice because people are Prince fans. So they go, I'm glad you wrote that feature. But
Right.
for me, I felt it was a failure because I thought, I have no idea who the guy is who wrote this. And what I
Mm.
wanted to do, and I don't know if this is helpful for Prince fans, but just after he passed, there was a symposium where quite a few people were discussing him. And somebody called him a genius. And Spike Lee was in the symposium, so you've probably seen it online. And
Okay.
Spike Lee rolls his eyes. And I thought,
Wow.
that's interesting. And I think the point, and I don't want to prejudge what Spike Lee was saying, but having spoken to a few other academics and spoken to quite a few Prince fans, what I didn't want is that Prince was all about hard work, among many other things. And calling him a genius almost erases the hard work. I spoke to an academic called Zahir Ali, who you should have in your show if you hadn't had on already, because he's fascinating about Prince. He runs a course.
He is.
He runs a course at Hutchins Institute about Prince, so yes, you know who he is. And he just said genius erases the hard work. And the reason I say that is because it's very easy, and it's easier when you're not a super fan to look at Prince and go, there was this alien and he played all these instruments and he danced in heels.
Right.
And he had a wardrobe department in his own house. And he was like an alien, and he was like nobody else. And what that does, I think, is it gives all the other musicians a pass to sort of go, well, I can't be Prince. I can't do that. And that's sort of true. But it also means that you dehumanize them a little bit. And, so I take that, I hope, as a compliment. I hope you meant it as a compliment, which is I tried to find the guy. What was interesting was this book. I interviewed a bunch of people, as you know. There's quite a lot of people I interviewed for the book.
Over 200.
Yeah, I'm trying not to brag, but yeah, it took 5.5 years of my life. Yeah, my wife said, don't mention how many people you interviewed. You've said that already, she's right. But what was interesting was I decided not to seek a publisher until I felt like it was finished. And what happened was I interviewed about 30 people, maybe about 30 or 40 people. And I thought, I have no idea who this guy is. And it was only really sort of still digging deep. And what I wanted to do was almost find out who this guy was. And I hope when you read the book, I mean, you know loads about Prince, right? I don't need to tell you that. I don't want to flatter you. But I would hope that you would have read the book and thought, I know him a little bit better than I did, before the week and a half that I started reading this. And that was really my aim.
So to answer that, yes, I do feel like it expose is the right word, but definitely shows the other stuff that's going on. And I think that, like you said, it's easy to just focus on the music. It's easy to focus on the work ethic. These are things I love, but I don't think all of those, they don't all go into making who this actual person is that's doing this stuff, and is very intentional on purpose of what he's doing when he's making these moves. And that's one thing about the book. I think because you're speaking to a lot of different types of people. That's not just the engineers. It's not just the girlfriends. It's kind of everybody a little bit. You can kind of see, or at least you can get an idea what kind of person he might have been like. I'm very hesitant to just say this is what he is, but he's definitely a lot more than the persona of Prince. I guess that's what I wanted to ask you about. What did you think of? And I wanted to ask you, where was the moment when you're doing this book and working on it where you were like, he's definitely not the person I thought he was? Or was there a moment like that? Something that may have shocked you,
I tried not to prejudge it, and as you say, it's not a salacious book. It really isn't. So for anyone listening to this thinking that I tried to dig into his personal life, I really didn't. I think for me, it was more just trying to write it without checking in with the estate when it happened. So I think that was the problem, I guess. I mean, I don't know Ezra, and I did the Netflix documentary, and I've not seen a minute of it. But I think that was the challenge that he had, was he was doing it in tandem with the estate. And then there comes a point where people go, right, well, you can't do that. And what I wanted to do with the book was write a book that I could write and have nobody say to me at the end of it, well, you're not allowed to do that. But equally, Prince isn't around anymore, sadly. And so for me, it was about being fair to him. And I think for me, the most important thing that any fan who reads this thinks is that I'm not unfair, if I can use a double negative, which is very bad for a writer, I know. But that I think it would be a representative portrait of him. But as you say, I deliberately, it was personal assistants, it was wardrobe department, it was engineers. I didn't turn down the chance to interview anyone. And I think if someone was writing a book about you, Michael, you could say, right, well, there's a thought, right? It might be people that went to school with you, know you well. It might be, your partners or people that live in your house. It might be your next door neighbor. It might be the people you work with. But there's also people that have maybe met you for 15 minutes that would still have something interesting to say about you. And so I didn't want to prejudge. And, with Prince, the danger is that, and you and I have probably both read a lot of Prince books, and what happens is people want to speak to the same people all the time. And for
Right.
me, what I got fascinated by different subjects of Prince. So one thing with this book is that I wanted Prince in the wardrobe department to have his own section. I wanted Prince and how he smelled to have his own section. I wanted Prince and how he dealt with the advent of hip hop to have his own section. I wanted, obviously, to dig into Sign of the Times really, really deep. And I hope that I've sort of done that to some degree. But I also realized that you don't have Sign of the Times without Parade. You don't have Parade and Around the World in a Day without Purple Rain. And Purple Rain, those deliberate left turns after that, leading to Sign of the Times. And you don't have Purple Rain without the Triple Threat Tour, which paid for the movie until Warner Brothers stepped in and paid for it. And then you don't have that boldness without maybe the Rolling Stones at LA Coliseum when it gets booed off. And that's according to some people that work with him, saying that was, some people say that was not a big deal and Prince shrugged it off. And other people say that was the thing that gave him the driver to be as big as he was in Purple Rain, because he had a point to prove. And Dirty Mind, is, we were talking about this just before we went live, that's an incredibly important move in Prince's career.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then what's the important part of that move? Is it the title track? Is it the fact that he went home to Minneapolis because he'd spent all his money with the first two albums? Is it the cover, where he's basically just getting everyone's attention? Is it the choice of songs? Is it the fact that he goes spare after going not spare, in terms of the material? And then you have to go back to, his childhood and, his parents, and did that give him his drive, that his parents were both musicians that couldn't make a living from music? So he was determined that he was going to. So, initially when I started the book, I thought, I'm just going to speak to people who were around in 1987. I'm just going to speak to people who are 86 and 87. I'm just going to speak to people who were in the studio when he made Sign of the Times. I'm just going to speak to Albert Magnolia about the movie, because I wanted the movie to be part of the book as well. I'm just going to speak to the people that were on tour with him when he went on tour with Sheila and that fantastic band. And then I realized that you can't really do that without going a bit back and doing all these other pivotal moments, signposts in his career. So, and that's why the book takes in so many different aspects of his career rather than just Sign of the Times.
Yeah, I was going to say, because, just looking at the cover and initially how it's sort of presented, I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be a super deep dive into Sign of the Times, which I have no problem with. Like, okay,
Yeah.
if you're going to pick an album, yeah, let's do that. But as you said, it is so much more than that. It is actually, a bio book about Prince. I mean, it's about Prince, in my opinion. That's how it read to me after a while. I know it's not a critique or anything, but I'm just to say, like, as much as I'm like, okay, I want to read this journey of Sign of the Times, I felt like sometimes, it jumped on a different path. And it was like, well, actually, I'm going to tell you about this story of Prince. And sometimes this story of Prince jumps timelines into itself. And then we come back to, I think each chapter almost seems like, okay, let's go to this song now in Sign of Times. And the journey kind of takes, what led sort of that sort of flow of the narrative that you're doing?
Yeah, I hope it was all right. I mean, I know that Dwayne's book on Sign of the Times is a proper deep dive, where he talks about every track in the studio, and that's an academic work, and that's a fantastic piece of work. And I read the Purple Rain book when I started working. Somebody went, "Oh, you can't write a book about Sign of the Times. Dwayne's going to do that." But I'd read his Purple Rain book, and then I read the Parade and Sign of the Times book, and I knew that this book was different. I knew that what I wanted to do with this book was tell the story about the guy. And for those who don't know about the book, and you can correct me if you find this wrong as a reader, because you've got as much insight as I do, is there's 16 tracks in Sign of the Times, as we all know. And what I wanted to do is, some Prince fans kind of love the deep cuts and the things in the vault that you've never heard.
Right.
I almost wanted to treat the greatest hits as there for a reason. And so the book mainly deals with the big records, and that's not an accident, but it's also, it's totally fine. The other books like Matt Thorne's or Dwayne's or other books that sort of really dig into the, some of the more obscure records, the forgotten classics, and I think that's totally legitimate. But for me, it was about these 16 tracks. What if each single one of them showcased a different aspect of Prince. So I Could Never Take the Place of Your Man. The guitar on that sounds a little like Carlos Santana, you might say. So then the chapter of I Could Never Take the Place of Your Man, as well as dealing with I Could Never Take the Place of Your Man itself, also deals with Prince's favorite guitarists. It also deals with his favorite guitars and the ones he loved to play. But it also deals with, well, hey, if you're writing a book about Prince and you're writing a book about guitars, you kind of got to talk about the George Harrison solo as well.
And you go deep into that too.
And there's some Prince fans going, oh well, he did other things, he did other solos, and he was so much more than that. But what I wanted to do was, almost for my nephews or nieces or for young musicians coming up, is if they go, who was Prince? If the book was a time capsule, and just go, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And I think for super Prince fans, they go, well, we know that. We know how amazing he was. We know how many instruments he played. We've seen him playing Party Man. We've seen him playing the piano in Gershwin. That sound check.
It's funny you say it like this. This book actually is probably, like, I would say it's the gateway between, like, I wouldn't give Dwayne's book to a newcomer. Like, you just, because that's like exciting. That's like master study.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it.
This one is like, it can speak to the person, the newer fans or younger people that I've heard of Prince, but I don't really know. This is going to give you're going to get the knowledge of it. And it's just enough where you'd be like, you know what, I think I want to become hardcore Prince. It's not, so it's not busting you over the head with stats and things. It's telling a story narrative, but you give enough detail, because there's stuff in there that I knew, but there was things I forgot, or there was things that I forgot the timeline of where they fit and how maybe they may have affected certain things. And that's what I loved about it. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. I forgot about that part though. Right. So for the old timers, it's like make you remember, like, it's putting it all together for you in just one nice chunk, man, that you can digest. So that's awesome.
Yeah, but I think for me, I really wanted to speak to these people because I didn't want to do, what they call, I don't know if they call it in the States, a cuts job, which is someone that's just gone on the internet and read stuff that you've read in newspapers. And it's difficult because
it doesn't come up at all.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear that. But, I can understand the frustration if you're a Prince fan of sort of going, we know he sacked Alexander O'Neill, we know he fired Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis after a snowstorm, we know that the Dirty Mind cover was OTT, but you still kind of got to tell these stories for people that don't know Prince and understand them. And what I tried to do really hard, and it was a challenge, was I really tried to do stuff for the fans. And, for Prince fans, this book is for them ultimately. And so it was just finding new ways of telling old stories. And, even with the snowstorm, or even the way we recorded Purple Rain, there were things that I didn't know. And like you, I've been reading stuff for decades about Prince on the internet, or I've read most of the books. So for me, it was the challenge was, okay, how do I find some new stuff? And hopefully we've done that.
No, I think you did. There was a couple of things. It was something about Let's Go Crazy that passed me that I didn't know. And was it about something about Dr. Fink?
The photographer.
Yeah, that's right.
Alan Bull, he played the riff in a Les Paul, and Prince said, "I'll have that." And then he
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that was crazy. I was like, what?
And I didn't know that Olivia Harris had written a thank you letter, after that solo, for example. And there were things that I sort of knew or had heard, but couldn't, like, so I got fascinated by, like, I knew that he dated Kim Basinger, but I didn't know it was as serious as it was. I knew that he had a windmill in his back garden, but I didn't know anything about it. And I got fascinated by that. But then there were other things where, the Kevin Smith's famous story, because I was only going to do this once, 2 people had to tell me a story, otherwise they didn't go in. So, there were Kevin Smith's famous story about him asking for a camel in Minneapolis in January at 1 morning. And, you can write this story and go, but because nobody else backed that up, I didn't put it in the book, so I wanted to make sure it was stuff that, more than one person. So, for example, Prince and Michael Jackson recording together in the 90s and going to do an album together. I didn't know that. But a couple, I thought you might. But a couple of people told me that, and I waited for a couple of people to tell me that before I could, put it in the book.
When I was initially first reading this, and on my Discord, we have a Discord, I I was screen capture just a few little things. I just was like head buster things. And the Michael Jackson, I put that aside. Michael Jackson fans and or haters or whatever, they're gonna have a field day with some of the stuff in this about Michael and Prince, because I was like, what? But it's great to see. Like, it just, to me, it just goes to show, like, man, there's so much about people, even if you think you followed them for years, we don't know everything, or we forgot things, or we're just misconstrued or whatever. But I love that. Another thing that stood out to me in this book was the Carol Davis sort of
Yeah.
story about slow love. Had no idea that type of stuff was going on in terms of, her writing credit and, payment and things of that nature. I was a little, that was disappointing to me.
Well, Carol and I have kind of communicated, and Carol, in fairness to Carol, I mean, I should probably put her in touch with you so she can give her side of the story. I tried to be fair to her. I think she's more fond of Prince than it maybe comes across in the book. And when you write a book, you've got to be selective about the material you include. So if it
I
comes,
don't fault her at all. I was
no,
just to hear
yeah.
that had to go through that. I would have had no idea. I was just like, wow, that doesn't align with what I thought, Prince would be doing.
But then she's not the only one that's been in that situation, as the book says, as well, is she? And I think that's,
Andre
again,
Simone.
yeah, I mean, Do Me Baby, the story behind Do Me Baby is sort of famous, isn't it?
Right.
And there's other people writing credits, and that's why I want to tell the story about Kiss. The book kind of goes deep into Kiss, and for me, Kiss is a really instructive story about Prince and his creative process, because it's kind of, Kiss is, I don't know where you rank Kiss in the kind of great Prince songs, but to me it's outer space. Yeah, well, it's science fiction. It's like, people don't do records like that. Yeah, people don't do records. And I'm falling into calling him an alien here, but it's kind of amazing. But then to get, the guys in Maserati, and to break down, I think it was David Z and and Craig Wright well talked to me about it, and to break down them working on it overnight and sampling a Bo Diddley song and slowing things down, and then Prince coming in the morning and going, you don't need this, you don't need that, you don't need this. And for me, it's really instructive about Prince, because there's two ways looking at it. And one is like, oh, those guys in Maserati, they really needed a hit more than he did. And, he took it off them and they worked really hard on it and they didn't get a credit. And that's so mean. And the other way of looking at it is, he hears this, he makes some adjustments, he makes it brilliant. He says to his record company, this is going out as a single. The record company says, no, it's not. Right. He says, well, nothing's going out as a single. It goes to number 1 in the Billboard 100. And by the way, Manic Monday's number 2, but that's another story. And you say, well, to have the foresight to do that is, but then if you're being fair to Maserati, one of the things that's always fascinated me about Kiss is, I've only seen Prince 8 times. I wish it had been 80. I mean, there's people have seen him a lot more than I've seen him, but every time I've seen him, I think pretty much he's done Kiss. And there's something about Prince live, he always manages to capture some sort of magic of the record. And if there's one song that you could argue, and this might be sacrilege to some Prince fans, but if there's one song that you could argue that maybe he didn't quite capture that magic, it's maybe Kiss. You feel free to disagree.
No. I know what you mean. I would say, I think the only time where Kiss live, and I was like, wow, was when he did on Arsenio.
Yes.
That was the first time I was like, okay.
You nailed it.
Yeah. So now, but
I'm not being, I mean, Prince live was, again, almost science fiction, the best who ever did it. So I hope Prince fans still think I'm being disrespectful. To me, it was interesting that he managed to craft something out of Kiss. And so that's why I really wanted to dig in the book. And you could say, well, Kiss isn't on Sign of the Times, but, again, with Sign of the Times, it was that different parts of his personality. So, for example, Adore, I talk about Black Radio because he said that one's for Black Radio when he's finished it. And then you talk about Cultural, it was the same time as George Michael Faith, and that's Broken about Black Radio, which is interesting. And he's basically trying to reconnect with roots, I guess, which is why he does Adore. But I also talk about him as a vocalist. I talk about how he loved, female vocalists. And then I also talk about, or other people talk about it. It's not just me talking, it's the interviews talking about, just Prince around a ballad and what, how many people have covered it. And,
Let's talk about Sign of the Times,
Mm,
and to go back to Kiss real quick to say, looking at it now, my opinion on that is this is what happens when you're working with a real genius, an innovator, and he's the top guy. Anytime you're in a camp with something, there's the lead guy. It is
mm,
what it is, and this lead guy is actually super hands on. It's not as if people are just giving him stuff normally, and he just puts his voice on it, and the rest they finish it off, and it becomes these things. No, he's like the main professor, mad scientist. He is Prince. So to me, like, so when you come off a thing like Kiss, I mean, if you just go back and look, what did it originally start as?
yeah,
Him playing blues or something, little ditty on the boombox, and say, "Here, do it was almost, here, take this." Almost as if it's like, there's no way y'all gonna even be able to do anything with that. But yeah, I gave you something. But then they do, because they're around greatness, they have created something even more special.
absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
whoa. And then when he comes back, y'all gonna go eat? Say less. Let me touch this. And then coming back, and he deconstructs it back down to, like you said, it's the science fiction thing. To me, that's the game. That's me. I'm sure you could have the same stories with Quincy Jones,
Mm,
when there was somebody that was, Rod Temperton started this, and then it went over to this, and then Michael jumped on it, and it became something else. I know personally, like Dr. Dre, you hear this stuff all the time, where you think he's producing all of it, but no, he's got some talented gunslingers that are doing them beats and making the stuff, and he just comes back and puts his producer energy on top of it. So I think that's Kiss was what it was supposed to be, like that. I mean, if it would have came out with Maserati, I don't think it would have been, it
no, of
wouldn't
course
have
not.
been what it is, unfortunately.
No, of
Not
course
to say it
not.
was bad, but
No, and that's why there's a lot of Prince fans, and I was tempted to kind of write the, Crystal Ball, Dream Factory, bleeding into the Black Album, and Love
I don't
Sexy,
want to
and
get into that too.
Flesh Sessions, and we're going to get into that, right? And apart from the fact there's other people probably better placed to write that, the other thing for me is like, but Sign of the Times went the way it did, and like you wouldn't get Sign of the Times
Right.
if all these other things had happened. So maybe you just celebrate that and just talk about what happened then. But I mean, the book does go into the Black Album and it does go into other stuff. But I didn't, if you want every coffin spit and, you know, dropped plectrum when the Flesh Sessions was made, it's not that kind of book.
Right, right. Just to ask your opinion,
Sure.
would you have preferred Sign of the Times to be Crystal Ball, or you prefer it the way it happened? Like,
Yeah, I think if you're a Prince fan, that everything you think is true. I think you've got to be happy with the way it's like, it's like saying, would you like Prince to have kept his own name? In the 90s, would you like Prince to have done nothing but Prince songs at the Super Bowl? Everything
hmm,
happened the way it was meant to happen. And what you just talked about Quincy Jones, and I mean, who isn't a Quincy Jones fan, right? But
right.
what was amazing about Prince, and with respect to the engineers that he worked with, but Prince was Quincy, he was Michael, he was Eddie Van Halen, he was Bruce Swedien. It was also, like Quincy Jones
Yes.
famously said, Temperton will fix it. When he left the studio at night, and Rod Temperton would come in and do the late night fix. Prince was the late night fix. So Prince was all of
Interesting.
these guys, and he worked with some super talented people. And when I started writing the book, I had in my head I had a very half baked theory, which was that the revolution didn't get enough credit for Sign of the Times, and that's the theory that a lot of that holds
Mm,
weight with quite a few fans. And I wanted to be fair to Wendy and Lisa, and it's one of the regrets that they didn't speak to me for the book, which is fine, because you can't make people speak to you if they don't want to. But
right.
I had in my head the theory that they didn't, particularly them, but the revolution maybe didn't get enough credit. But what happens is you speak to people, and like Prince was as good as you think he was. Was it Jimmy Jam says? However good you think Prince is, he's better. And
Right.
and and so anytime I was kind of tempted to give people credit, and Carol Davis deserves credit, and Andre Simone deserves credit, and Mark Brown and David Z deserves credit for Kiss. I didn't want to deny anyone credit, but
Mm,
the punchline or the end story or whatever you want to say, phrase you want to use is like, oh, and in the end, Prince did it. like, or if you hear something brilliant on his records, you sort of go, oh, that, more often than not, that was Prince. You know, and there's some different examples otherwise. So Mountains, I didn't realize quite how instrumental, no pun intended, Wendy and Lisa, that's a Wendy and Lisa song. You know, and Prince admitted that to Morris Hayes, and he went, "Oh, you think that was me? Interesting." That's what he said to Morris
Wow.
Hayes about it. So that's
Huh.
a Wendy and Lisa song rather than a Prince song. But from what I understand, and again, he's not around to defend himself, so you know, I hope that's fair. But you know, and I think Wendy and Lisa definitely had a huge impact on him. And you know, when I write about Around the World in a Day in the book, I really wanted to give due credit to Wendy and Lisa's brothers. You know, because a lot of people say that they really informed the sound of that album. They really, when Prince took a left turn, they were maybe the ones with the coordinates at the start of it, you know, that helped him.
Well, a couple things.
Sure. I jump off the tangent.
No,
I'm
no.
sorry. You know that.
There's definitely been a conversation about the revolution and the contributions. Do they get enough credit? Do they get too much credit? I remember specifically being at one of the celebrations after Prince passed, and Wendy, well, the Revolution was on the stage there, and they were talking about Sign of the Times, and I think one of them made the comment that, yeah, Sign of the Times is a revolution record, and I know within the fan base it was yay, and there was some about that, but it's undeniable the contributions of Wendy and Lisa and the rest of the band. I always say it like this, like, oh, you may have done this and that on the record, but I always judge it was you probably did, but I want to see what did you do afterwards? Like, does the rest of your body of work speak to that same greatness? Or you know what I mean? And I can say for Wendy and Lisa, absolutely. Like,
yeah, they're amazing. They are amazing, and certainly no shade in them. And you know, I mean, they're phenomenal musicians and band
complete
leaders.
badass.
I mean, well, yeah, badasses, and you know, Prince surrounded himself with band leaders. I mean, Renato, you could argue, is a band leader. Rosanna is a band leader, and
Right.
you know, Andrew Goucher is a band leader, and you know, Prince nearly worked with Christian McBride, and he's one of the great band leaders in the modern era. And you know, there's so many, and you know, Matt Fink could be a band leader, and Paul Peterson's a band leader. I could go on. I'll stop in a minute. Sheila's a band.
Morris Hayes.
Yeah, Sheila's a band leader.
Levi, Sheila. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and Levi. Yeah. I mean, so many amazing musicians, but what I try to do is just let people make up their own minds, and that's why I spoke to so many people, because it's, you know, I don't know if this helps, but as Prince fans, but I find with music biographies or music books, there tends to be two routes. There tends to be the Michael Jackson was born in Gary, Indiana in 1958, and and he made Thriller, and then he died. Or it's, let me tell you what I think about Michael Jackson, and you know what people don't understand about it, and it's people giving their opinion. And what I want to do was just find out as much as I could about Prince, but then also reflect, what do you like about Prince? What do fans like about Prince? And then just cover as much of it as possible. And, you know, I also wanted to write about one of the things I hope that makes the book different is there's a lot of people talk about other musicians when it comes to Prince. And they go, did you know that Prince liked James Brown? Or did you know that Prince was around at the same time as Madonna and Michael Jackson? And it, like, yeah, totally valid. But for me, like, okay, where were the areas that Madonna arguably had the edge over Prince? You know, where were the areas that, you know, why did Michael Jackson at that point sell more records? And then why did Prince artistically maybe leave more of a footprint? You know, so it was that. And then it was also Sly Stone, for example. You know, why did Sly Stone not continue his career in the way that Prince did? What was interesting about him as a band leader? What was different from him as a band leader from the way Prince was? What was different from Prince and James Brown? Prince and Joni Mitchell, what did they have in common? You know, very different people, very different backgrounds. But so it wasn't just sort of going, hey, did you know that Prince liked Joni Mitchell? It's like really digging into, okay, well, Joni Mitchell was a painter, so she really dug colors. And if you look at all the titles of her music, you know, the Shakespeare, Scarlet Concrane, there's Pretty Green, there's Big Yellow Taxi. And then you think about Prince and Prince's color. So that, you know, what's it he says at the end of Parade, you know, thanks for Claire Fisher for making the colors bright to the colors black and white. You know, this is a guy that thought deeply about colors, and you know, Prince was a massive George Benson fan, as I'm sure you know, and George Benson apparently hears music in color. So for me, that stuff like that I find interesting. or like Prince and Miles Davis, and the way that they were both band leaders. Stop me when this gets boring, but for me, I'm
Yeah.
fascinated by this. So when I read Miles Davis' autobiography, he talks about the space between the notes, and then you go, oh, hang on a minute. I'm speaking to Scotty Baldwin, who I know has been on your show, and he says, I'd like to thank all our band members, and Scotty and Silence. Silence is a band member, and you're like, that's deep, man. That's
Yeah.
deep. So for me, it was not just sort of going, yeah, Prince was born, Prince dated so and so. Prince's favorite color we think is orange, not purple, which I love all that stuff. Or Prince smelled of lavender. I love all that stuff.
Yeah.
But also like just sort of trying to dig a bit deep and go, well, if Prince was like Sly Stone, why was he like Sly Stone? And if he wasn't like Sly Stone, where was he not like Sly Stone? Or where was Sly Stone not like Prince? And so on. Or, Prince and David Bowie, Prince threw a party for David Bowie in 1987. And they've got so much in common, but they're also quite different in different ways as well. So it was trying to dig into that a little bit and just, and again, I spoke to someone that I think didn't meet them, but Dan on the Automator that produces Gorillaz and Depeche Mode, and he just said something very intelligent in the book that I thought, well, it doesn't matter that he didn't meet them. I thought that was really interesting because he said that when David Bowie is in a film, he's playing someone, whether it's Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, or whether it's the Nick Rogue stuff, The Man Who Fell to Earth, he's playing someone different. Whereas like Prince in a movie, he's kind of just, he's Prince.
Not too far from the persona of Prince.
Yeah. And I thought that's interesting. And, this is a guy that's worked with Gorillaz, where it's like totally different personalities. So, and I think there's some people that would write a book about Prince and sort of go, well, I don't care about that because he's not met Prince. And, this isn't, but for me, it's like just to be able to, and Prince and David Bowie for me have got loads in common. So if you look at Bowie in the 70s and you look at Prince in the 80s, they came up with a new image every year. They came up with a new sound every year. They changed music, they advanced music, but also, and they have that thing, both of them have that thing of, oh, it's an alien. And actually, in some ways, it's like, well, where are they regular guys? That's interesting to me. And the other thing that Prince and David Bowie have in common, I said this in another interview recently, but I think it's true, is that I don't know if you saw the Janet Jackson documentary recently that was on, and it came over here as well. And one of the things she was saying was, oh, when the Jackson 5 had, pool parties in LA and David Bowie used to come over. And I thought, oh, I know what she's doing. She's basically saying, and, with all due respect to the Jacksons, she's basically saying, we were quite excited because David Bowie wants to hang out with us.
Interesting.
And Prince has got exactly that same thing, where anyone who's on a talk show, whether it's the States, whether it's over here in London, whether it's Graham Norton over here, whether it's Jimmy Fallon where you are, it's like people will go, you met Prince, tell me about that. So there's that level of, is that cachet that both those guys have got. And I know there'll be some Prince fans going, oh, he's much better than David Bowie. And there'll be some David Bowie fans going, oh, he's much better than Prince. But the one thing that they undeniably have in common is they've got that thing that anyone who met them wants to crowbar it into the conversation.
They're both fascinating.
But it's like, if you think I'm boring, I hung out with David Bowie. Like David Bowie used to hang out. And also they had a lot in common. So David Bowie used to phone Nina Simone up late at night and talk to her about music. And I think Prince would do that with Anita Baker and George Michael and all sorts of other musicians as well.
I take it you're a David Bowie fan.
I'm a fan of lots of people, but I'm a Prince is probably Prince and Stevie Wonder are probably my favorites. But yeah,
really, okay,
yeah. But I
wanted to ask you. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
No. But it was more thinking about it, and just when I heard about the party that he'd thrown for him, I sort of started digging into it, and then I spoke to people that were around Bowie at the time, and it was just seeing the way that Bowie would encourage people to be creative was different from the way Prince did it, but both super interesting.
And they have the connection with Cat too, right? Like that was that.
They have the same weekend. So Cat was, but I think David Bowie told Cat to do it, which isn't in the book. But David Bowie said this is going to be better for you, if you go with Prince.
Which is was. That's wild.
He was right. Yeah.
And I'm curious. You're from a different country. How did Prince come to you? Like, when was the first time you got into Prince? How was Prince perceived overseas?
A lot to do with. Okay, so I think I saw Little Red Corvette in 1999, and on British TV when they used to do rundowns of the American charts. So I heard both of those tracks, and I was like, "That's interesting." It was just before MTV. MTV
Okay.
didn't come to Europe till 1987, but it was,
Mm.
they would show videos on TV, and I thought they were really interesting. And I think somebody at school turned me on to DMSR, and I think that was the point that I went, "Okay, this is different." And by the time Purple Rain was in the charts, it was like, okay. But I think the perception of Prince in Britain, and this is not with Prince fans, but Prince, it was around the time that he wasn't saying yes to We Are the World, and he came to the Brit Awards, which are, like our Grammys.
Okay. Yeah.
And Big Chick came along, and he said something like, praise be to God, or something super, super short. A Big Chick came on the stage with him. And so one of the things I've sort of tried to do in the book is I got to speak to Chick Hunsbury's two daughters, who were both fascinating. And you can almost sort of yardstick Prince's career as like before and after Chick Hunsbury. So
Wow.
like before Chick Hunsbury, he was kind of like super open. And then he had this massive man-mountain bodyguard who was a bit protective. And, as you probably remember at the time from the States, was it Cyndi Lauper brought a big wrestling guy on stage when she
I
won an
remember
award?
that. Yes.
And it was like, that was her way of taking the mickey at Prince a little bit. But, the Brit Awards, when he did this, there was definitely the perception in the UK of like, wow, this is a strange dude. This is not, this is not what you normally do. You normally get up and thank your partner or God, or, and he was super shy, and this giant bodyguard on stage with him. And, the reason I mentioned Chick is obviously he wasn't, creatively involved in Prince, but it was interesting that Prince maybe had that, he became a little bit guarded after Purple Rain, is my understanding of things. Which is fair enough, because he was the biggest star in the world, wasn't he? And, and he was big in movies and music, which is, in the cover of Time and Newsweek in the same week, it absolutely bigger than big. And I think something changed for him there, is my perception of it from speaking to people. And, Chick Hunsbury is almost like the visual representation of that, if you like.
It's interesting that is that sort of one of the first visuals you have of Prince is with this huge white muscle-bound bodyguard covering this black man.
Yeah.
And this black man that doesn't speak very much. Thank God.
Yeah, because he's not doing interviews. He's not, so many bands from, it goes back, but, like the Killers backwards, and, will use the British music press to break themselves. And this is American bands will use the British music press. The Backstreet Boys did it as well in the pop press over here. Well, they use the British music press to break themselves, and then they'll go back to America with this wave of hype around them. And so Prince was kind of a growing big thing in Britain, but he wouldn't do interviews. So when he does come to Britain, and he does the Brit Awards, and it's his most public display so far, and there's this giant, Hell's Angel guy that used to carry the Angus Young of AC/DC over his head. And you think, well, who is this guy? And then, 2 minutes later, you hear he's turned down We Are the World, and everyone else is doing We Are the World. And you're like, who is this guy? And then you hear the music, and you go, well, he's brilliant. That's who he is.
What was the first album that you got into?
I think for me, it's only fair, because I've written this book, to say that for me, Sign of the Times is the. But I love Parade and Sign of the Times are probably 1 and 2 for me. Sign of the Times just ahead of it, but I love both of them. But I think I remember loving Around the World in a Day at the time.
What was the impact of Purple Rain there? Did that movie have an
that
impact
was huge.
there?
Yeah, of course. Like if you watch, Top of the Pops, which is our big show, and you see this guy in the bath with petals, it's like, what is going on? What is going on? I think you just knew that. I love a lot of Michael Jackson's big records, so I don't want to say anything denigrating about him, but I think, there just seemed to be more texture to Prince's records in terms of what was going on, and there seemed to be more provocation, if that's the right word. And I think, with Darling Nikki being in it, lots of people love that record, for lots of different reasons. But I think, there's lots I remember. But I remember the drums and Take Me With You. Even I was quite young when I heard it. I would have been 12, but I remember the drums and Take Me With You and going, wow. And then you sort of think, wow, he had a great drummer at the time, which he did. But then you also think, you find out later, was he playing on them?
Right.
Yeah, he had a great drummer. He's called Prince. Yeah, it's finding out stuff like that. But Purple Rain was amazing, and I think Purple Rain for me is actually more amazing having done the book, because you dig into how he made it, and you dig into, I referenced Bruce Springsteen in the book, and again, I wanted to reference other musicians because I wanted that breadth of reference. And I think some Prince fans would be like, I just want to hear about Prince, 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 Prince. But, one of the things I compare him to is Bruce Springsteen famously, when he did Born to Run, he knew that record had to work for him. So I think he spent 6 months writing it and then 6 months recording it and getting the sound right. And if you want a different example, was it Uptown Funk, the Bruno Mars and Mark Ronson? I think they spent 4 months trying to get the drum sound right. So that, so some people have really agonized over things. But what's interesting to me about Prince, and for example, One Dove's Cry, which is one of the most fascinating songs for Prince fans for lots of different reasons, is that he spent 3 days on it. And if you're a Prince fan, like, that's unusual. And
right.
like if you're a Guns N' Roses fan and they're doing 8 years in Chinese Democracy, you're like, 3 days, is that all? But if you're a Prince fan, that 3 days is an eternity.
Yeah, I mean, his level of musicianship, even that early on, is already so developed, but it's also so like brave and like unafraid to do whatever, sounds right. Oh, no bass. Oh, well, it sounds right. Like, just the fact that he could do that, and the songs were just hitting. Like, I mean, he was at the fucking, not to say anything he did, but I mean, it was just that good. You know
Can
what
I
I
ask
mean?
you a
Like,
question?
yeah,
Can I
go
ask you
ahead.
a question? I mean, 'cause you're like, you're a super fan, obviously. I can tell that even before I heard your podcast. But what do you think? This is not a trick question, because I've got an answer in my head. What do you think Prince was the best at?
In terms of music, or
Whatever answer you want. So, like, it could be guitar, piano, bass, drums. It could be songwriting. It could be
interesting.
lyrics. It could be, I've got an idea in my head. It could be presentation. It could be the whole package. But I've got an idea in my head.
What was he good at?
What was he bet? No, what was his best thing?
Was his best?
Because in the book he says to Morris Hayes, I'm a storyteller, and you listen to things like Raspberry Beret, and you listen to things like When Doves Cry, and he's. I use a quote from Bono again. I reference other musicians, which I hope is all right. I know that's not going to be different taste, but he talks about Prince as being the ultimate, is it cinematic storyteller?
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
what the song is when he sings it straight away. So Prince thought he was the best at that, but I don't disagree with him. But I've got an idea in my head of what I think Prince was best at. But I want to know yours.
He was best at, how to express this. He was best at being seen.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if it was a situation, I think all his situations, he knew how to make you pay attention to him, no matter what it was. If the music was going to be so crazy that you had to whoa, or
Yeah.
if you stripped the music away and you just looked at him, when he walked in the room, he was going to have all eyes on him. But he was
Yeah.
good at, if there's a challenge, the challenge is, what can I do to make you notice me? And I just think that's what he did great. Like, the changing of the
Wow.
albums and the looks that was what he was good at. It didn't matter what it was, but he was going to apply that mindset to it, whether or not it worked or not. It was gonna be some shit you just didn't expect, and you're like, whoa. That, to me, that's what Prince was great at.
I love that answer. But I mean, and I hadn't thought of that. And but that's why the book is a brick, because it's just to warn you, if you're not a Prince fan, there's a lot in it. And I've not put this in the book, but I've thought about it quite a lot, as you do when you spend 5.5 years writing a book about someone. And I think Prince was maybe the best as an arranger.
Interesting. I can see that.
Like even better than as a producer. Like great producer and great
Yeah.
guitarist and great bass player and great, great dancer. Or maybe I'm saying that he doesn't get enough credit as an arranger. Maybe I'm just saying that. And I know that he came alive when he worked with Claire Fisher, obviously from Parade on, and he worked with some amazing musicians. But for me, it's like, why is When Doves Cry brilliant? And it's like, because of the way it's arranged. Why is Black Sweat brilliant? Because of the way it's arranged. And it's not even not necessarily the producing. It's the, and you know, one of the engineers said something really fascinated me, and this is why Prince is one of one. I mean, he's one of one for lots of different reasons, but one of the reasons he's one of one is that everyone loves the way that Prince played guitar. Of course they do. But then you get into that and you're like, well, yeah, but which, rhythm guitar or lead guitar?
Right, right. Interesting.
And then you go, well, you know, both obviously, but, you know, I guess lead guitar, if you're talking, you know, George Harrison, are you talking, you know,
And see, I lean on the rhythm aspect of it. Like that's for me, you know, but I can understand both sides of that.
Yeah. But
I think what you said, him being an arranger, I would almost argue that that kind of goes into kind of what I'm saying. Like it doesn't matter what it is that he is going to put the package together in a way that he does it in a way where he obviously is a super student of music. Like if you know music, you can listen to what he's doing and you can kind of see, oh, that was a very slick way you did such and such style in this. I wouldn't even have thought you would mix that with a jazz song or this. But to me, it's like he was so knowledgeable about music and it showed. And he was just a great sponge of rearranging all of these things, even his looks, being able to rearrange other styles into, but I'm gonna do it this way, you know. I don't know. So I can definitely see what you're saying. I mean, I always say a man who has an extensive and super detailed shoe collection where every shoe is different and the minute details in the shoe that you would never see anyway, that's a genius motherfucker. That's a motherfucker that's on some other stuff, man. Like, because that just shows you everything he does. He's thinking on that level. Even if you don't see it, it's in there. You listen to the music, there's things in them songs that you don't even pay attention to, but they're very intricate. And he's saying, this is why I love those Atmos, because you sort of get to hear some of the other little things he's saying in these records you didn't get to hear, or the other drum licks or that just were buried in the mix. You know, he's like, God, what was he doing in the studio?
And that's also, you know, when you write a book like this, it's like, well, what's interesting about Prince? And the answer is kind of everything, right? So, you know, like we can talk about shoes for a minute, if you want. And one of the things I love about, you know, like, so there's lots of different ways of looking at Prince with shoes. You know, one of them is that, you know, a lot of people said the way that he would jump off the lighting rigs in heels is one of the things that led to the pain later in life. So again, that's in terms of the story, that's relevant. But just in terms of a fun little aside, Willie Rivera, I think, was one of the first guys that hooked Prince up with shoes when he moved to Hollywood. He did Charlton Heston's sandals in the Ten Commandments. And then Gary Kazankian, in an interview in the book, he did Prince's shoes, like, say, the Super Bowl, you know, in the mid-noughties around that time. He also did, like, Kiss and Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars' shoes as well.
Wow.
So you go from Charlton Heston to Bruno Mars and Lady Gaga just with Prince's feet, you know, and I love stuff like that.
Fascinating.
You know, or like, you know, and that's what I tried to do with music as well. You know, like, so, you know, I tried to view Prince, like, let's say, who would you compare Prince with now? Maybe in terms of owning her own masters, Taylor Swift, and that might upset people because they go, well, she's different from him. But that's self-actualization of like wanting to be your own career. I'm not comparing them musically.
For sure.
Just to be, you know, I'm not.
Don't hate me in the comments, y'all.
Yeah. Have a go at the Scottish guy. It's fine. But, you know, I guess musically, people might say Bruno Mars on The Weeknd because those guys are funky, right? Or, you know, they might say someone like Lady Gaga because she makes interesting choices, you know, and she's brave, I think, artistically. Or they might choose someone totally left field, like, I don't know, Joanna Newsom or somebody, you know, somebody totally wild.
D'Angelo, who we just lost.
What a loss. Yeah, D'Angelo, of course. I think I didn't see anyone in my timeline that was talking about anything other than D'Angelo in the last week, and fair enough, you know. And yeah, or even someone like Danger Mouse, the producer, you could look at someone like that and go, you know, like that, he makes interesting choices. But then you look at people like that's 2025, and yeah, don't hate on me for Taylor Swift. It was only the point about the Masters, but you know, but then you go back and you go, well, who would compare with Prince before? And then of course James Brown, and of course Sly Stone.
Yeah.
And people talk about Jimi Hendrix because of the solos, but then if you know Prince, you know that he probably preferred Carlos Santana. And that's what most people that are close to him say. And you can hear Santana as well in his guitar playing. But then you also think about the way Prince was live, and you think about the early hours gigs in a club, and you think, this is a jazz band leader, really? So then you look back in Miles Davis and then Duke
Right.
Ellington,
Yeah.
you know,
Count Basie.
Basie, yeah, those guys that just changed music. And so,
Yeah, absolutely.
and Prince is the one guy, I think that he's a stadium rock star, but he's a jazz band leader, because he's happy playing a 3 a.m. club, but he can also play a sports stadium.
Yeah.
And, there's not, again, that's one of the many reasons why he's one of one. So for me, the book was a quest in trying to understand Prince through music. And I think a lot of people that love Prince almost just like it's just Prince, Prince, Prince. But for me, it's like, okay, well, how, comparing him to these other guys, even though he's unique, was a really interesting exercise.
With doing this, so 5 years working on this book,
Yeah.
200 plus interviews, conversations, in a nutshell, what did you learn? What did you walk away from this? Thoughts on Prince?
I tried to find. I think he was kinder than he's had an image of being. I think certainly also later in his life, I think he was softer and gentler. I think there's this image of him as being. I mean, he was a hard taskmaster as a band leader, but I think he was. He didn't raise his voice around people. I think there was a very mellow atmosphere around the Prince circle. He didn't really encourage crazy, if I can use a word. One of his biggest songs. He didn't. The inner circle around Prince seemed to be quite chill, if that's the right word. And certainly later in his life, he lived a pretty simple life in Minneapolis. He went cycling, he went record shopping, he had coffee in the local shops. Nobody really bothered him. And again, I think for me, it's about trying to be fair. It's about trying to be representative of his life, and not go, "Hey, this alien came from Planet Music." Yes, nobody was like him. And, I love those stories where, the windmill in his back garden and all that stuff.
Right.
Or, a fountain on stage and, the demands around the Sign of the Times tour that nobody else would understand. I love all that stuff. But it's also important to be fair to him and to be accurate in terms of how you write about him. And, I think as a husband, as a boyfriend, as a band mate, as a team player, I think he was more considerate than maybe he was given credit for.
What do you mean by that? He's more considered.
Well, he was a rock star, right? We can all agree on that. And when I say he was considerate, that doesn't mean that he was always, faithful to the girlfriends that he was with. But I think he was, and he was very single-minded in terms of music. But I think he was, I don't think he was an unkind man. I think there seems to be great kindness there. There seems to be thoughtfulness. Certainly in terms of his philanthropy, he was incredibly generous, and it was very important for me to reflect that in the book. And there's pretty much almost a whole chapter on that. So the cross, again, that's when I talk about every song and Sign of the Times, reflecting an aspect of Prince's character. I tried to write about his faith, and I tried to write about his philanthropy in the chapter that's, under the cross. So, I think he was, but he was very, one of the things I say in the book, and again, the nice thing about writing a book is, yes, you can interview over 200 people, but you can also sneak in your own opinion every so often if you're allowed. And one of the things I do is that I sort of say that, what's the coolest thing about Prince? And, you could look at the dancing in the heels, and you could look at his own wardrobe department, and you could look at the fact that he changed his own name, and the fact that he, gave his record company the slip, and the fact that he said no to things that were really obvious that other people wouldn't have said no to, like duetting with Michael Jackson or whatever. He's just like, nope, don't want to do it. Or people were talking about huge gigs that you would just say, nope, don't want to do it, not feeling it. And that's all really cool. And of course, I said, if you want to be really revolutionary, you could say what was really cool about him was his music. And that's a reasonable answer. But I've sort of suggested that the coolest thing about Prince is that this was an era where it was, Live Aid, and where it was Amnesty International concerts, and where it was, Farm Aid, and, We Are the World, and really big public statements and declarations of charity. And Prince whispered his, and Prince gave and supported on the grounds that nobody knew. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's, when you really think about that, that says a lot of the character of him.
Yeah. And I think, it's right. It's showing the character of the man if that doesn't sound pretentious, what I try to do in the book, as much as possible.
Wow. Yeah, like I said, it's a great book. I definitely
Thank you.
recommend you guys reading this book. I'm not just saying it because John is here. Like, I read this before we did the interview. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've read a lot of these books, and this is a good one. If you still got a few more minutes, you still got some time.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So, all right. So I always want to have some just some Prince conversations, so we can kind of geek out on some stuff too, man.
Of course.
So, is it fair to say that you love everything without question? So let's say Love Sexy.
I love Sexy. I do love Sexy, but
Okay.
I like the drums and the drums and Dance On. I actually spoke to the engineer, Eddie Miller, at the time, and there was stuff that I ended up doing in the book, like finding out, how did you get the drums like that? And it was a mistriggering in the drum machine, and Prince and Sheila E. were mucking about, and that's why Dance On sounds the way it does. So it was an accident, mistake, and a lot. But I didn't make the book because the book's predominantly centered around Sound of the Times. But
what other of these things that you left out of the book because you didn't feel like it? But that would probably blow our minds a little bit.
I spoke to John Robinson, who was the drummer for Thriller and used to play for Rufus and Shaka Khan, and he just walked me through. It was a Monday morning when they finished "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough," and they all stopped about 11 or 10, 12 in the morning, and they went, "That's the number one record," and just for someone to walk you through that, and like Steve Lukather, Toto were in the next studio to Prince when he was doing Sound of the Times and Sunset Sound in LA, and he told me about David Paice coming in and how they wrote Africa together. Because when you interview someone, you got the opportunity, you ask them, right?
Yeah.
So, and he told me about finishing off "Beat It" with Eddie Van Halen for Michael Jackson, and so if you get the chance to find that out, but so if anyone reads the book and says there's not enough about Prince, it's like, trust me, there could have been more about other musicians, but yeah, and there's loads of stuff. I mean, loads and loads and loads of stuff about Prince, and I'd need to go through all the interviews to kind of tell you more stuff, but maybe if we speak again, I'll do some deep dives in it.
Okay.
But yeah, loads.
To go back to sort of my point or question to you, I was just curious of your thoughts of Prince's later albums. Were there some favorites? What are your thoughts? Were there some I'm just curious. I don't want to put nothing on it, but
no, I love them all. I think in some ways, people, some of the ones that people think are stinkers, I quite like. So 2010s, I love Sticky Like Glue is one of my favorite.
Now you're talking.
And I love bits of Planet Earth. I like Chelsea Rogers and I like guitar.
Okay.
And that, in fact, that's one of the points I make in the book, is that Prince did so little material live post, the classic albums, you might call them. But the one song that he did play again and again was guitar.
Yeah.
Planet Earth, and that's big. And my point to that is that I'm saying this guy loved to play guitar. It's a lead into that point. But so I love Hit and Run's got some great stuff, and then also, why do we love music? So, like Rock and Roll Love Affair, nobody would call that the best Prince song of all time. But when I went to Paisley Park, my lovely wife, took me to Paisley Park for my landmark birthday. And they played Rock and Roll Love Affair in, I think it was Studio B.
Yes.
And because I think they used it as an example of a recent song, and they played a demo of it. So every time I hear that song, it puts a smile on my face. But is it the best Prince song? No. But there's also something about music and where it takes us to a certain place. The Rainbow Children's got some great stuff on it as well. So, but I think also there's people that speak to rare Prince stuff better than I do, and I didn't want to write that book. And one of the things I did write in the book that I think will not be to everyone's taste, but I thought it was important to cover it, is Prince undeniably was amazing. But how come, whether it's Sign of the Times, whether it's Love Sexy, that thing of being the center of the musical conversation, it happened with the Super Bowl, and it happened with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I guess. But in terms of his music, one of the questions I ask, and you can come back at me and say that's not fair or I disagree, is with the recorded output, but why was he not quite at the center of the musical conversation, post 87, 88, maybe post Diamonds and Pearls? Now, we could say it's the way the music was distributed, that he didn't have Warner Brothers muscle. We could say that he didn't tour the records because he just moved on. I'm not necessarily saying the records were bad, but, I think I've tried to dig into that question and actually answer it in the book. I can share some of the answers with you if you want, but
Yes, please. I'm curious. What do you think?
So, well, for me, it was like Sign of the Times and Purple Rain some people would regard those the best two albums. Why might you regard them as the best two albums? And one of the reasons you might regard them as the best two albums are because he was making a record for the movie, he took extra care of it, and he was like, he knew it had to be right. He couldn't just he wasn't a perfectionist. He would just play a record. As you know, he records 3 songs in an afternoon and then stop, or 3 songs in a day and then finish at 5 in the morning and then phone the engineer back and tell him to stop brushing their teeth and come back because he had another idea for a song. But he would finish lots of songs in a day. But Purple Rain, he took extra time and care over it. Sign of the Times is interesting because, again, the book deals with the whole why it was going to be a triple album and then it goes into a double album and it could have been a single album. But, he and Lenny Waronker kind of agreed to make it into double. And that's interesting because the Revolution have kind of recorded on it, and then he re-records a lot of it, so that he makes it his own sound. So that requires some thought process. He's sequencing the album. He thought very carefully. That was one of the things that Susan Rogers said that was fascinating to me. But I kind of knew it from hearing the records, which is he cared about the integrity of the album. Like he said when he gave Beck the Grammy, he said, albums like Black Lives Still Matter. He cared about what an album would sound like from track 1, track 2, and you can hear that in Sign of the Times. You can hear the way that it goes from Sign of the Times to Play in the Sunshine to Housequake, to Dorothy Park. You can hear the way he's taking the listener through an experience, and so Sign of the Times, he's taking extra care because it was going to be a triple, and then he might have thought for a while it was going to be a single, and he agrees that it's going to be a double. That took extra care. He's re-recording parts that the Revolution have played on. That takes extra care. After he's done that, especially after he leaves Warner Brothers, if he wants to put a record in a supermarket 2 weeks after he's made it, he can. If he wants to put it online, what he did with the NPG Music Club quite early on, he can do that. So, and the other theory, and I'm really happy for people to disagree with me. They'll be like, well, what does he know? He thinks Taylor Swift's as good as Prince. So, which I don't, by the way. But just to clarify, I have no problem with her either. But people will say that so he could do an album in a morning and have it out by that afternoon. And the other theory again is that when he grew up with those guys, like he grew up with Bobby, he grew up with Matt, those guys, Lisa, they were probably in a position just about to be able to say, hey, Prince, we disagree with you. Sheila maybe just about was able to do that. After probably, from Sign of the Times onwards, everyone that he's in a band with, we know who the leader is, right? And if you disagree with Prince, like you're going in through the outdoor, to quote one of his lyrics, aren't you? Is that fair?
That's interesting. Let's see. Yeah. No, well, I would say this. I think that all of those things, I think Prince always did that, though. I think he always took great care with every album. Well, though I can understand how it looks.
Album 1, I'm going to produce it. Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, I think that was a part of his thing, was like each one of these is going to tell whatever story or point I'm trying to make, and it'll be very specific to it. I don't think any of the albums were, not to say thrown together, but I think there was probably more care put into Dream Factory or Crystal Ball. And I can see where he might be like, F you, like, here's the version of this that, it's going to work. But to me, it's like a total tonal shift of what he was working on. Like Crystal Ball, doesn't start with Sign of the Times, right? Like
Nah,
it's not the point of the album, but to
no,
change the album to be the point of Sign of the Times and what that song is talking about, it's a to me, it's like a drastic tonal shift of intention. Even though a
right.
lot of the songs are the same, and the fact that again, all of these are dealing with being patchworks of three other different albums, the Camille Project, and
Yeah,
which is
Camille.
a
Well, I
very
really talk about that.
intentional. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's such a super intense thing to do, and then not to do it and just use the songs into this. So I go out and say, yeah, I agree. Like I think he was intentional with everything. Uh, I think all the bands, though, I think every band member across time knew who the leader was. Like
oh, I don't dispute that. I don't, not for a second.
I
But I guess like was it Dirty Mind where he thanks is it Bobby and Matt calls them heven and Lisa he calls them heaven sent
sure.
helpers in the credits, and he's not talking like that about the later guys, and to the same degree,
No,
arguably.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess we were talking about did the later music sort of grab the public's attention, I guess, as much as the previous stuff? Is that kind of what we kind of got into this type of
Yeah,
thing?
I guess is well for me it was like if you're going to write a book about Sign and Symes and it's what
Mm.
album number 9, I think if I got that right, and I mean I'm always a bit nervous about saying Prince did 39 albums because is it 39, is it 40, is it 140 if you include the
Right.
stuff in the vault, and that's the thing about especially guys, less so women, but especially guys with music. They're like, oh, I think you'll find. Um, but it's just interesting to me that like album number 9, and then you go to album number 39. If you said to people, name a Prince album from 10 to 39, there
Sure.
wasn't a Prince fan, there wasn't a super Prince fan, and tell me 2 or 3 tracks on it. I think people would struggle, maybe.
Yeah, you're right, but I think you would do that with James Brown.
Yes,
People would do that with Sly. You know,
yes,
I think one of these, to some degree, I would say Stevie Wonder. You know,
yeah, yeah,
most
sure.
people are not going to name, Jungle
In Square
Fever
Circle,
soundtrack or
yeah,
something
yeah,
or
yeah,
what, but
yeah.
uh, but I think it's different. Is there's not very many artists that have that long discography and body of work like that, where there's the point where they're the hit guy and everything they do is
Yeah.
it leads the culture. It
Mm.
shapes the style and the culture in society. And then, if jump 20 years ahead, somebody else has that because no one holds it forever. Like I don't
No,
care.
that's true. That's true. No, and I
No
wanted to
one
be
holds it
fair.
forever.
I did want to be fair on Prince because, again, Alan Leeds said that, or other people. I think Christian McBride said that as well. That James Brown after 1975, you know, you can take or leave it. And I think
Right.
for me and it's very important to say with Prince, very very important to say with Prince is that until the day he passed, as a live act, he never stopped being the most exciting thing in the world. And if
Absolutely.
you're talking about him as a musical and being the center of the musical conversation, if Prince came to your town,
Oh, you
people,
stop what you're
especially
doing. Yeah.
you stop what you're doing, but especially young people, I was lucky enough to see him at Hop Farm in Kent over here in England. And what was lovely was there was, it was a festival, so people would come see other acts. Can you believe that? Even though the Prince is headlining the bill.
Right.
And my friend was interviewing people for radio, and there was like a 15, 16-year-old, and he just said, my life has been changed from this moment on.
Wow.
you
Yeah.
know,
When
and
you
it,
see one of the
that,
great, yeah, that's
yeah, and
absolutely.
that's Prince live. Is like when you see Prince live, and I was lucky enough to take my wife to see Prince a couple of times live after we were married before he passed. And I just said, you're in for a treat. You're gonna.
Yeah. And, I think, I can speak to it because I follow black music a lot, and I look at the older acts and how they are perceived versus the younger ones, and I think it's the same thing. There are these groups, cameos, the Times,
Mm,
Charlie Wilson, El DeBarge, a lot of these guys, they're older in the game, but you go see their show and you're gonna see all those years of showmanship. It's on
mm.
a different level. Yeah, they don't have the hit songs that are being played today, but when you want to go see a real show and be entertained and see somebody that knows what they're doing,
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna put on a show for you every time, right? Like they're so seasoned, and I think Prince was the same way. I mean, he was seasoned when he was alive, like in his prime, but
Yeah.
later in his time, I think he was a far better musician, band leader, stage, like Welcome to America, and
Yes.
all that. Like it's ridiculous stage presence. Like you know what I mean? Like, yeah, he can command a stadium and you don't have to put no new record. The new record's out, you're not gonna buy it anyway, but you're about to see the best show in the world. Like it didn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just so seasoned. So I think of
It-
course, a
yeah.
guy like that is not going to be the top of the music. That would be shocking if they were. Like, and we can
Yeah.
laugh. Like I use James Brown as an example because I was young, but when it was Rocky 3,
Yeah.
came out with
Or
Mr. T.
living in America.
Clabberland, or was it 4? Living in America, whichever one was it? It was
Yeah.
Rocky
Yeah.
4.
I think it
James
was
Brown had a
4.
big hit, right? That was a big hit, but
Yeah.
I wasn't a James Brown fan at the time. I knew who he was. I was a kid,
Yeah.
but even I knew listening to that, I was like, this is cool, but I know this is not the sound that made him what he is because there's no way. Like I was like,
Yeah. The word
I
I'd
know
use.
yeah,
The word I'd use would be vital. I mean, I put on the radio the other day, and that was like 6 music over here, and Get Up Off of That thing came on, and you just again, it's science fiction. It's it's
yeah,
like this is not mere
absolutely.
mortals that work here.
Yeah. You
This
know
is
it when you hear it too.
you
You're
know
like,
when you hear it, yeah, and
okay.
that's not living in America. With all due respect to that, I mean, but I didn't want to be unfair to Prince because there's later Prince that
Sure.
I love, and I know that fans get super defensive about Prince's later work. I just I think sometimes when you write, but you want to be brave, and it was like, let's just have a conversation about if we think that he wasn't at the center of the musical conversation as much after Love Sexy, are there reasons why that happened? And is it ageist? Is it racist? Because people like Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen, they get revered right up until the albums they're making now.
Right.
They get a much warmer reception than Prince did, and is that fair? I don't know.
It's
I
all of that stuff. Yeah, it's all of that.
and it was more like a. You'll find that because you've read the book that there's lots and lots of questions that I tried to answer. Everything from what was his favorite color and what kind of shoes did he wear, and why did he have trainers with a face painted on them, to when was he insecure, when was he mean to his girlfriends, when was he lovely to his girlfriends, to why did he have a windmill in his back garden, to why is there a mistake in forever in my life, and why did he leave it in. It's just lots
Yeah.
of different things. Why did he not do a record with Miles Davis in 1987?
Mm,
Because
yeah.
he could have done.
Yeah, there's a lot of things he could have done.
But
With
he did
that,
enough. He
yeah.
did enough.
With that said, as we round this out, what do you where do you see and where would you like to see Prince's legacy moving forward?
Yeah, one of the things I didn't ask everyone the same question apart from one, and it was how do you think Prince will be remembered? And what I wanted was just that diversity of opinion. And some people went, oh, he's a great guitarist, and some people went, he's the Purple Rain guy, and some people said he was fearless, and particularly, he was a black man that redefined the way his music was presented, and I found that really moving. And a lot of younger artists, particularly black artists, had sort of talked about how Prince had changed the game for them. So for me, he's the most self-actualized pop star that ever lived. As you said earlier, when we were talking, everything was by design. There weren't accidents in Prince's world, and just the fact that he changed the color of his car when his new album was out to reflect that. He lived it. And he loved playing live. He was music. I think, is the most accurate response. And there's not many pop stars that you can compare to Mozart or Picasso, or I know Miles Davis compared him to Charlie Chaplin. In terms of that thing, if he can do anything. And I think he's such a, in a good way, unusual pop star that he never stops being fascinating. I mean, this book's 534 pages, and you'd be pleased it's not 1,000, but it could have been 1,000.
I wouldn't be mad at it.
Some people would.
almost, is it fair to call Prince a pop star? Was he a pop star for as a part of his thing, or was like you would say, yeah, he was just unlike any other pop star,
What was
almost.
the expression I think the young people use? He was all of that. So like he was, he was a jazz band leader. He
Yeah.
was he was a lead guitarist. He was a rhythm guitarist. He was a stadium rock star. He
Mm.
was a musical channel. He was a producer. He was a symbol, and I don't mean that in terms of his actual symbol. I mean in terms of he was a game changer in terms of he was a businessman. I've just read a book about Jay-Z and his business practices, and it was fascinating. But Prince did all sorts of innovative things.
Yeah.
The fact that music's now sold online, Prince was doing that very early on. Using retail outlets,
Mhm.
using brand partnerships. Again, ahead of the game in so many
He's a
areas.
movie star.
He's a
Go ahead.
movie. Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah. I was going to say actor. That might be. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he was a movie star. He was a bass player. He was a drummer. He was an arranger. We talked about earlier.
Right.
You know, he was a storyteller, a songwriter, and
Fashion icon.
fashion icon. And yeah, one of the interviewees said, people discovering Prince in 40 years' time, how lucky are they going to be? And it might just be a photo of him. And I think that's part of the reason that I wrote the book
Yeah.
the way I wrote the book, because I kind of, and with all due respect to Purple Rain, um, like when people show a movie of Prince's on TV, it's normally, and I know there's distribution problems around Sign of the Times Live, but I wish they would show Sign of the Times Live, because for me, that's the best introduction to Prince.
Oh, did
And
that come out over there when they went to IMAX? Did you
yeah,
guys?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I went to see it twice. Yeah, and yeah,
Nice.
loved the bones of it. I mean, it was great, and yeah, the audience loved it as well. I went on a Friday night, I went
Nice.
on a Monday night, and on a Friday night, everyone was singing and dancing, and yeah,
Wow.
and it hasn't aged. I remember seeing it at the time when I was a teenager, and just to age me, and it was incredible then. It's incredible now. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, Prince's legacy is. I think there's a fearlessness, and I think that the symbol thing actually is. I revisited that in the book as well, and for me, that this is such a brave thing to have done. Like Liz Wright, who's a singer, is a Prince last live act Prince saw, and she was talking about it as an artist and saying, you don't need a name to be who you are. I mean, that's freaking
Mm.
crazy. That's the God move, I think, is the quote that she said. And Dave Hampton, really amazing music executive, worked with Bill Withers, um, worked
Yes.
with
You said
worked,
something about Dave in the book that kind of made
yeah,
me worried a little bit, but
yeah. He's not been in the best health.
okay.
But that was after I interviewed him. But he said to Scotty Baldwin, so it's Scotty's quote, but it's Dave Hampton said it to him. He said, the one thing the music industry really fears is a truly, truly free black man. And I think
In the
when I
world.
hear Prince and when I see Prince, and I thought about it as well in terms of just me writing the book, the freedom. I thought about freedom a lot, and I was
Mm.
doing a job at the time, and I was thinking about freedom and how do I find freedom within my job and my day job, and how do I find freedom in terms of writing the book that I want to write, and that was inspired by just the way that I'm not comparing myself obviously, but I'm just saying that Prince is inspiring in terms of that sense of freedom and
Absolutely.
just that fearlessness, and at his core, that's what makes him amazing. Just being unpredictable and being fun, and like we've all heard the story about Questlove DJing Fela Kuti, I think it was, and Prince singing "Put on Finding Nemo," and just doing the unusual thing. Just
Right.
doing the crazy thing, doing the thing that's not expected. Or Dave Chappelle, he sampled something from one of Dave Chappelle's specials, and I love that story. And HBO lawyers get in touch, so Prince just gets Dave Chappelle over to Paisley and gets him to record it, and that version, and then doesn't even speak to Dave that night because that'll be all over the tannoy, and
Yeah.
he was so bold and free. I think is a good word for Prince. I know he wrote a song called Free, and it's but that's how I think of him ultimately.
Love it.
Like
Yeah. No, I love that, man. I love what you said. It could be just a picture. Yeah, I think I think I could see 20, 30 years from now, just somebody seeing a picture, or y'all can hate me if I want. They're going to see some sort of AI recreation of him doing
Sure,
something,
yeah.
and I just think him visually is so fascinating because there's nothing like that you can't help but look into. What is this about? Like, who is this guy? Who dresses like that? Who moves like that? And I think that would lead you. And I could see him becoming a whole other thing, way even more than what we think, and it not be about music for better or worse. But I could see him visually being such a shocking thing to people in a good way that I don't think yeah,
But
and
that's
then being the symbol, I could see how that could be a whole thing later too. Like, ah,
it's amazing. The simple thing is amazing, and I respect it more and more the more I talk to people about it, and the more I read into it, and even the fact that he wants to own a symbol, and I compare Prince and the Rolling Stones at one point, and only because
mm,
the one thing about the Rolling Stones that you cannot deny is the branding. The branding of the red lips is
yeah,
brilliant.
I knew what that was, and I never heard their records at that time, but I
Yeah, there
knew
you
what
go.
that
Yeah,
was.
and so you know who that was, and
Yeah,
that you look at the Prince symbol, and I can see why fans are torn about the symbol because in some ways the symbol's not, it wasn't around when a lot of the records that we love were around. But it's undeniably Prince, and it's nobody else.
yeah,
And yeah, he was, as you say, even a picture. So a picture, one of the reasons that I thought I have to write this book was about 30 interviews in, and it was Leroy Bennett, his lighting director,
mm-hmm.
and he had a sort of like that, they were doing the Sign of the Times movie, and I'm sure you've seen it in these lights, this sort of multicolored rings, and Prince said, I want an outfit like that, and his wardrobe department knocked it up that afternoon. And that's the outfit that you see during Hot Thing in the movie, and you think, who does that?
Right.
And that's
Yeah,
that's one of a kind right there.
absolutely, man. Yeah, just yeah. I mean, when we're gone and moved on, all of the older Prince heads are gone. I just think it's going to be something totally different because their frame of reference will not be Purple Rain. It won't be Sign of the Times. It's going to be, oh, I got into him the love symbol, or I got into him with 3121, or a Super Bowl was the thing that was
Yeah,
their moment, and his career would be totally seen a whole different way, and they're gonna blow their gasket to like, wow, he's got a lot of freaking albums, like, 'cause there's no one
yeah.
else that has a lot of albums like this.
Well, you're saying that, but you're saying that, and the vault hasn't been opened yet.
Right, and there's still stuff that we don't even, yeah, but
And that's why I featured the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because that some people would go, well, Prince played guitar like that, solo like that every day, but that will be, like, if you can call it, a
yeah,
gateway drug to a lot of people into
absolutely,
you know
absolutely, yeah, that's
understanding what. But also, what's interesting to me about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is not just the virtuoso nature of the solo, but he understands. He looks fantastic. If I can be so shallow, in terms of the way he's dressed.
not the shot. I told you the presentation is always gonna wow you.
What
Just
is it Oscar Wilde said? Only shallow people don't judge by appearances. You
yeah,
know,
the
but
falling back and having the guy catch you. I mean, it's just
exactly.
show
So it's
business
yeah. So
101.
exactly. And he times it, and he takes somebody said he takes the time he needs to tell the story of the solo. So he goes the extra bars, and then he falls, and he knows where the camera is at any given moment.
Yeah,
That is next
that's the
level stuff.
difference.
That's the difference. And when I talked to you earlier about being an arranger, Hans Martin Buff, who was one of his engineers, sort of slightly later on, and I
Mhm.
don't know if he's been on your show. I think he has, but and he said something fascinating to me that I'd never thought about with Prince. And we think about Prince as being this amazing guitarist, which of course he is. We just talked about that. But Prince would also, and this is why I mentioned arranger, if Prince played an amazing solo, but it didn't work for the song, he was strong enough and talented enough that he could chuck it out. You think about Prince existing in a band, right? And he would be him
Wow.
being the guitar player and him playing an amazing solo, which he would do every 5 minutes. To be the singer or to be the producer or to be the drummer, where he goes, "Oh, we're going to chuck that out," it wouldn't happen. There'd be all these interband politics. Going, "What do you mean that guitar solo is crazy? That's amazing." But Prince was so talented that he could play an amazing guitar solo and then go, "Do you know what? I mean, like the bass in When Doves Cry is probably amazing because Prince was an amazing bass player, right?"
Mhm.
But yeah, he's in a position that he could go, no, we'll just,
I mean, it does whole songs like that when you're like, why is this song not released the same
But
way? Like,
that's why I love Black Sweat, because it's really like there's not that much to it, and yet it's like
but it's
what's actually
Prince.
going on, but there's a lot to it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Fascinating conversation, John. Thank you so much. I love these type of
Sorry,
talks.
I can't chat on about Prince. I hope it was okay.
I know because we could certainly keep going, but I'm gonna be respectful. I want to be respectful to the listener, to the viewer. How about that?
Yeah, sorry, had enough. Yeah, but lovely to meet you, Michael. And I should say, if we're on camera, that a lot of your interviews when I was writing and researching the book were genuinely really helpful and very insightful. And I love the fact that you dig deep, and I love the respect you have for Prince World. It's inspiring, and the enthusiasm. So
Man,
thank you very
so
much.
Very welcome. I appreciate that, man. I love the book. Thank you so much. I want y'all to go out and check this book out. It is definitely worth getting. It's definitely a good read. Even for you, I know everything. Go read it. Trust me. There'll be some little things in there. You're like, oh, okay. And it touches on everything. Like I said, it gives you a human picture of Prince. That's what I like about it. Any last words, John, from you?
The only thing again, the other thing that's missing that I've mentioned is MTV in the book. And, I wanted to write about MTV because MTV was one of the few things in the 80s that was bigger than Prince. And of course, the MTV, you've got the Under the Cherry Moon premiere. The MTV is almost the reason for that being in Sheridan, Wyoming. And so Prince, in some ways, is a timeless artist. You listen to his music and you go, he could be like around when the jazz greats are around, or he could be around now and in the charts and great. But it was interesting to frame him in that time of like, okay, who did Prince have to bow the knee to? And maybe MTV, one of the people that he did have to, and then you could look into his videos and so on. And so that it was fun to do that as well.
Man, we have to talk about MTV a little bit. Now that you said, I'm sorry, because I didn't MTV just recently. I think last week ceased doing all music videos.
Yeah, and I thought about that when I heard the news. What I've tried to do with the book is, Oakland in the book is a character, Minneapolis in the book is a character, LA and Sunset Side, the studio is a character, and MTV is like a big character. And it's probably, I don't know if I've got favorite chapters, but people that have read it tell me that their favorite chapter is the one that deals with MTV videos Prince made, and particularly MTV and the VJs coming to Under the Cherry Moon in Sheridan, Wyoming, and just what a crazy situation that all was. But also, this is Prince's fearlessness that everybody else was spending cajillions, if that's a word, it's not, but you know what I mean, on pop videos and promos. And that Prince does the Glam Slam video and they turn up. Why is he wearing a blindfold? And it's like, he's just doing it. That's
right. You talk about that.
And he's just doing it to show he can do it. Why is there a lyric video for Sign of the Times? And then, it's funny because it's the 80s. So nowadays it would be like, you or I could do it on our iPhones quite easily.
Right.
But they have to get they have to get a processor, and they've got the wrong font. And so, it has to be in Times New Roman, I think it is. And, stuff like that I love. And the guy actually has it in peach and black, and he doesn't realize that that's the theme of the album. And I love the clips with that. I love the synergy of that. And I love the fact that the guy that did that then left the music industry and now works for the Ministry of Defense and the Air Force. And I sort of say at the end of the chapter, not to spoiler alert, but I sort of say it's a job where everybody still wants to fly, just because I thought of it. And I thought, well, Prince fans will get that, right?
I got to go back and read some of this stuff again, because I vaguely remember that, but it kind of flew over my head.
That reference, yeah, that was, no pun intended. But, yeah,
but I mean, MTV though, I mean, it's like, we would not have the Prince of today without MTV.
No,
we wouldn't be no Michael Jackson today without MTV. A lot of people would not.
No, there's a guy called Les Garland who was around at the time, and I think that there is that kind of. It's wrong to call it a myth, and we've all seen the David Bowie interview where he says, "Why are you not playing more black artists?" And
look.
And
the look he gives.
The look he gives. This is why, David Bowie is cool in lots of ways. There's another one, you asked me why I'm a fan,
Exactly.
If you want another reason, that's fine. But the guy that was running MTV basically was making the point that record companies did not make videos for the black artists. and
Right.
he needed Prince and Michael Jackson to come along, who were undeniable, to kind of change the needle on that discussion. And without their videos, without their songs, it wasn't.
Yeah.
With all due respect to Whitney Houston and Lionel Richie, they weren't the game changers that. And I'm not to diss those guys, but
No, no, no.
Prince and Michael Jackson really did change the atmosphere.
As I think about this, what let me say one thing. You look like
Uh-oh.
it's interesting.
Uh-oh.
You kind of look like Kurt Loder a little bit.
I know who that is. He's
Back,
mentioned in the book, actually.
yeah,
He
Kurt
went to
was the
see.
man. He was the man back
Yeah, well, I used to watch him, I think, when MTV started over here.
then.
But
MTV News.
yeah. Yeah, I've not heard
You
that before.
kind of
You look
got
a bit. You don't think you look like Rick Ocasek?
hilarious. I could kind of
Kurt
see,
Loder?
but you actually kind of look like you also kind of maybe it's in the teeth, mouth, a little David Bowie-ish too.
Only the ones
Especially
where
when
you
you smile like that. I don't know where I'm going with
probably
this,
just
but
the Ashes to Ashes video you're thinking of. But yeah, okay. Well, we're all Bowie fans, but one of the things I'm saying is changing the subject very
that's
quickly
messing with
for
you.
me is one of my favorite sections in the book is when it talks about the MTV competitions.
Mm,
So under the Cherry Moon premiere, as a lot of Prince
yes,
fans will know, they did the
Sheridan, Wyoming.
10,000th caller would have the premiere in their hometown, and it was in Sheridan, Wyoming. And in some ways, because the film wasn't a big hit, and in some ways because MTV arguably wanted it in LA or Chicago or New York, arguably,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
like not what everyone was expecting. And but one of my favorite sections of the book was I kind of dug into all the MTV competitions at that time and the muscle that MTV had that it could have these
Mm,
competitions. So it would do like win the chance to do a Madonna video, to direct a Madonna video, and I think the guy that won that ended up working for Ridley Scott. But then it also
wow.
had competitions that were a total disaster. So it was John Cougar Mellencamp did was it Little Pink Houses, I think the song was called. It wasn't in the UK charts, but
I remember the song.
yeah, and they did a win a house in his hometown, and it was his wife was in real estate, and the
Vaguely
winner,
remember this.
but the winner the winner got a house and it was next to a whole lot of chemical waste, so they had to sell it 2 days later.
Oh wow.
And then somebody else won the Batmobile, but 2 days later they got a phone call from the IRS, so very
Oh
quickly
wow.
the Batmobile. And then there was somebody
Interesting.
that won it. So there's all these funny stories about MTV competitions or win a
Yeah.
night out with Van Halen, and they didn't know that the winner had serious brain trauma 2 years before. So Eddie Van Halen got him to chug a half a keg of lager. They were giving him filet mignon, and he blacked out after an hour. So there's all these hilarious stories that just where things. So in that context, in that prism, Under the Cherry Moon, this light romantic French comedy being in cowboy
right.
country makes sense. It makes
Yeah.
sense
You
in
say
that
it that
context.
way.
When I frame all the other stuff alongside that.
Yeah. I know where it's gonna go. So we talked about MTV and them opening the doors with Prince and Michael, and we were comparing Whitney, and I would also wonder too, though. I think it's I can understand why they picked Michael and Prince to sort of push that, and then not to say the music didn't warrant it, because it certainly did. But I can't sit here and say the music of Whitney Houston, the music of Rick James, or whoever was that warranted it as
Cameo.
well.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Cameo, I was thinking of, yeah.
A lot of those groups' music warranted that as well. But I do feel that the presentation of Michael and Prince in terms of how they presented themselves was a little easier to swallow than the representation of the black man who didn't have all the makeup on and who was more masculine, seeing and may have been more of a threat than, as opposed to those brothers, which are super talented. I mean, Michael Jackson's videos deserve to be shown on all platforms. I mean, they were magic. That
Mm.
they were just cinematography things. I don't. To me, The presentation of those was incredible. Thriller itself is an incredible piece of work. It still works today. My daughter is a child and she's fascinated by it. So it is outliers, but I do think, and but I say this to say I can say why a Rick James had frustration, or some of the other
Mm,
stars at that time had frustration. Like, why are they not playing ours though? Like, okay, you say you're opening the door, but you're just playing just these few. But and I find it's very interesting because you just go a few years later where the image of the artist are super masculine, is a gangsterish. So
mm,
in one hand, and that becomes their predominant image of music. Period. Like even we grew up where you had the Twisted Sisters and
mm.
Warrants and all these rock. I mean, I grew up where rock was the main thing. Like that, everything was judged against rock music. Period. You was just considered lower tier if you wasn't with those. So it's interesting to see how it changed where they're not even like even today's world, there's not even no equivalent to that, at least in the mainstream that you see that. But maybe I don't see it. But I'm just saying all this to say MTV was a fascinating thing for many reasons. Yeah, they opened the door, but I would say I think they still opened the door to only things that they were just comfortable with, and not the totality of what was going on with music. That's
Yeah,
my
yeah, no, I totally hear you on that. I mean, I think it's almost bigger than MTV though as well. It's like, let me throw two acts at you that would both be in the same letter of the record store. But if you look at something like Ready for the World, and then you look at someone like Run DMC, such
right,
different presentations, such
right.
different ways to sell yourself. One maybe more threatening to an
And
audience than
what
another.
what makes Run DMC palatable or acceptable, right?
Yeah,
Was Aerosmith, right? If
yeah,
Aerosmith had not walked them through the door like that, I don't think they probably would have still been fighting to be seen, because they had videos before that. Was the Rock Box? They was already
but
doing that sound. Key and Peele.
I don't think we talk about Run DMC enough. I don't think they get enough credit.
We don't.
They were,
We don't.
they were like Tougher Than Leather. They had their own movie. They were on the cover of Rolling Stone. Number one records. But you're right. And that,
Raising Hell.
I mean, I don't want to be self-deprecating because I'm trying to sell a book, but like I wouldn't pretend to be a hip hop expert, but what I have done is like I try to deal in a certain amount of depth with the rise of hip hop in the book, because you can, Sign of the Times comes out the same year that is the Def Jam tour.
Right.
It's just before Public Enemy take over the world. It's just before De La Soul give their imprint into music as
Right.
well, and you have to reflect that, and then you fast forward a few years and it's Diamonds and Pearls. And one of the things that surprised me was I always thought that Diamonds and Pearls was Prince with Tony doing a concerted effort to kind of join,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
you can argue it maybe is, but actually Michael Bland told me, and I know he's been interviewed by you a few times, but he told me that I think they were just performing, they were jamming on the Humpty Dance by Digital Underground,
Mm,
and Tony M got up and just freestyled, and the Prince went, "Whoa!" And
mm,
that's more in line with his whole career, which is he hears Wendy playing in Lisa's bedroom and goes, "Whoa, you're hired," because she's playing
right.
Joni Mitchell chords, or um, he works with a personal assistant like Ruth who becomes his manager, and he sees potential. And one of the twins that I interviewed, one of the dancers,
Mm,
Andy's now a film director. He could see,
mm,
or what he did with Sam Jennings, where he's working with him on some online ideas, and he's ending up almost running a store for him, and helping him sell his music.
right.
So it's actually more the Diamonds and Pearls sound. When I dug into it, wasn't just Prince going, "Oh, hip hop's massive, we're going to get on that." It was more him just seeing potential in someone he worked with
Oh
and
no. Yeah.
taking it somewhere.
It's probably a little bit more organic. I
Yeah,
would say Prince wanting to get rid of rap would I would go back to Love Sexy or something like that, where it's like
yeah.
intentionally we don't put this rap in here, or I'm gonna talk about it in this album. It's not gonna come out, but yeah, I see rap. Here's what my thoughts are. Rap, good or bad, but no, I mean, again, it just goes back to I think Prince is a student of music, so he is
Mm,
going to incorporate whatever is, when you get
Yeah.
to the 90s and he starts doing, to me, like house type music records, I'm like, well, okay, that style is very popular. Yeah, Prince is gonna
Yeah. Yeah.
slave. He's gonna do his version of these techno songs and stuff, whether I like it or not. But I understand it. This is what he does. Like he's not
Yeah.
immune to.
Yeah, you hear, like the Future and stuff like that off the Batman album, and it's like that's right it's around the time that Acid House is becoming big in the UK,
Mhm.
and like his ears were open, his ears were always open, and like the
Absolutely.
book deals with how much he loved hip hop, and he loved Vibrant Thing by Q-Tip, and used to play guitar over the top of that, and
Mm,
he loved a lot of the Soulquarian stuff. I think there's direct dotted lines to with D'Angelo and the Roots and
absolutely.
Common and Prince, and
Absolutely.
no, you don't have to look far to see the connections there.
Yeah, New Jack Swing. As we start to hear some of these unreleased songs, we're like, well, he was all into that. Like he just didn't put it out or something. But okay.
There's people that I wish I'd interviewed for the book, and I tried really hard to get Teddy Riley, but so
Oh man, that would have
I
been
really wanted to speak to him, but I couldn't.
awesome.
But there was all sorts of people like that. Marcus Miller I wanted to speak to, and Greg Gaines and all those guys that played on, because Marcus Miller
Yeah,
played so much in Tutu by Miles Davis'
yeah.
records from around that time, so he would have had insight, and that was also interesting when you talk about what a Prince and Miles Davis record would have sounded like. And
Mm,
actually, when you hear Tutu, you can kind of guess, because my understanding of that record is that it was Miles and Marcus playing all the instruments. And so who else do we know that would play a whole lot of instruments? So, it would
right.
have been
Wow.
so there was a template there for Prince to follow. I mean, I'm only guessing, so
Yeah,
people
yeah.
might think I'm talking garbage, and that's fine. But, if you were that's the thing about Prince. We all have guesses, about what certain things, but, would Crystal Ball have been better than Dream Factory? Would have been better than,
Yeah.
Camille?
Right. Right.
Sign of the Times is a triple. The list goes on. And what I tried to do with this was actually just go, everything happened the way it was meant to happen.
Supposed to.
Let's focus on that and celebrate that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. All right. All right. Woo! This is a great conversation.
I'm glad you
John,
enjoyed it. I hope I didn't. Yeah, I
nah,
hope not
man. This
upset any
is
Prince
all
fans,
good.
because I do love some of the later material as well. But I think it's just, you've got to reflect and go, well, why? Like I was a music editor. I worked in the music press like 97, 1999, 2000. And, I was like,
Mm,
just, I think that Strokes and the White Stripes were coming out just when I was getting out of it. And
okay.
it just, like, to me, it was like, why was no one talking about Prince? And to me,
Interesting.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. And, maybe he wasn't touring around then as well. I think once he started touring again, seriously, everyone talked about him, because,
Is it? And I think is it a thing with Prince fans where we love the music so much and we always like, why is people not as excited as us, or like why is he not in the top of this? But it's such a thing that's about being, I guess, being a Prince fan. Like you just know it is so good, and you kind of like, why is there even a question of like why he's not considered?
It, the thing about writing a book about Prince is that I tried to have a lens where, as I said to you earlier, it's like, okay, what was interesting about Sly Stone? What was interesting about David Bowie? What was interesting about, Joni
Mm,
Mitchell and so on? What was interesting about Santana, as well as Prince? What was interesting about Madonna? And then when was Prince maybe not at his greatest? And, like when
mm,
I think I can see fans sort of going, why don't you just talk about Prince? Because he's fascinating enough on his own, and I
right.
get it. But I also think you've got to you've got to judge the whole era. It's like you've got to
Mm,
say, like some Prince fans absolutely love Under the Cherry Moon, and I put a couple of quotes in from Prince fans who love Under the Cherry Moon, like famous Prince fans. So like James Samuel, that directed The Harder They Fall. It was exec produced by Jay-Z, and Sananda Maitreya, that used to be known as Terence Trent D'Arby, and they're both raving about Under the Cherry Moon in the book. And it was important to me to put that in because I know that Prince fans love it. But you've
mm,
also got to be able to say, as successes go, this was
right.
not one of them.
Right.
you
Right.
know, and and like, why would you want to mention the Rolling Stones concert when he booed off? He just said that's their audience, not ours, and he shrugged it off. But actually, you
Mm,
dig a bit deeper, and some people close to him are saying, no, actually, that spurred him on.
yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that made us sound bigger. And do you have a little red Corvette without that? I don't. I mean, you probably still do, but it's fun to speculate on things like that.
Yeah, I mean, is there, and I'm sure it has happened to other artists before in that type of capacity, but I can't think of anybody that, there was a defining moment where they got booed off the stage as an opening act for a very large, I mean, I'm sure that has happened, but you don't really hear, it's not anybody's story.
No, but there's different things. I mean, Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake at the Super Bowl is like
Okay. Yeah.
is like an example of something where it's like, whoa, this is bad. But then is that a question more about, it's a different era. So we're then having a conversation about PR, we're having a conversation about representation, we're having a conversation about chivalry, maybe.
Yeah. That's like a early cancel culture type of thing, where the industry, where the powers that be are like, get her the hell out of here, versus, the people at that particular venue, just get them out of, I don't know. I guess it's a thing where Prince opening up for the Rolling Stones, I imagine for his audience, it was such a clash in the culture of, he is not a part of this scene. I'm assuming this is what they thought. Like, he is not you wouldn't expect to see some black guy at this rock concert. How dare they have this dude? And he seems effeminate or something. It just goes against the audience of the bikers and all that kind of shit. Maybe
they
not.
had all that. They had all the Hell's Angels, didn't they, at the time? So that was still part of their crew. But what's also interesting about that is that, is it around about Dirty Mind, Prince does a couple of gigs at the Ritz in New York, and one of them is like I think the night after John Lennon shot, and the guest list for those two gigs. So I think it's something like December and March, but they're close together anyway. And it's Mick Jagger, it's Gene Simmons, it's Nile Rodgers,
right?
I think Andy Warhol's there as well. So this is someone that people are really talking about and paying attention to. And Mick Jagger always likes to be seen as being, ahead of the game, even when it comes to film directors he hires, or documentary makers that he works with. So he would have gone, "Oh, I've got a good idea," but we know Prince on the cover of Dirty Mind, and that's not going to play well with that audience, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's curious. Did Rick James know his audience as well as he thought he did? That he would think that they would be, and you're a super hipster. You're Mick Jagger. Of course, you're going to be into it. But do you really think your audience is going to take to this? That's the question, I guess. Like,
and there's a big difference. There's a big difference between the LA Coliseum and a space like that, which Prince has never played up until that point, and the Ritz, which is a small club. Again, it's fascinating. But then, I'm not crediting the Rolling Stones audience with Prince being the biggest star in the world, but I'm just, some people have speculated in the book and said, that helped him, and then there's the thing about the book as well is that Prince was always big on mystery. So all we can do is speculate, in some areas. Right. I can't be definitive and say that was him being booed off of the Rolling Stones gig is the reason he did Purple Rain. Some people have said it is, but Prince said at the time as well, that's their audience, not ours. What I guess is interesting about it is that if that happened now, it lives forever on a camera phone. That chicken part that hits Prince in the face is viral. It's a meme. It lives forever. There's an argument that maybe that happened to him and he shrugged it off, and 3 days later he was at another gig.
Well, because it's not being seen, right? I guess you could probably make the argument the same thing with if that James Brown, Michael Jackson thing if we had camera phones when that happened and it immediately went online, it would have been very different. If we had saw that at that point.
The book tells that story as well, but it's again, that's a story that Prince fans know well. But again, you can't prove. Some people say that Prince was mad with Michael Jackson and Michael Jackson stitched him up. But Anthony Hamilton told me that he watched the video and laughed about it with friends at his house, around the 31-21 era. So who can say really,
Oh yeah, I mean it's hella funny. Anybody can look at you can see like, okay, man, whoever got you or you got yourself on that. That's a laugh one. But it's easy to say that 20, 30 years removed and you became the man after that. But like you said, if these things happen today, they would have such an effect because you can't deny them, right? And then they're going to also play into whatever narratives are going around society and culturally at this point. So I can only imagine if there was, the Rolling Stones happened now with the way things are today, how that would play out online. People
Yeah,
see
absolutely.
those
Yeah.
types of people who don't like it, would have played a
Yeah.
slightly different, the whole
Absolutely.
different.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it would have been interesting. And that all that stuff goes viral. But what's also interesting for me is things like the Dick Clark interview in American Bandstand or the Rolling Stones gig is that because Prince was so self-actualized, when things went quote unquote wrong, and Prince maybe didn't see mistakes the way you and I would see a mistake. Prince adapted to it and tuned to it. But when things did go wrong, it's how he reacted to that.
Yeah.
Or he had a commercial thing that was less than a success, like Under the Cherry Moon. It's a year later and he's coming up with Sign of the Times. Less than a year later and he's coming up with Sign of the Times. That's incredible.
Yeah. Now, I know we said we are going to stop, but I guess as we think through his career, those early moments, it was very controversial things that would happen to him. The recording of, as we talked about, USA for Africa, very much ramifications behind him not going to that. That affected his career for many years, right? But he's able to bounce back off of that. But those things did matter. Like he was involved in a lot of things that people question. The name change was very controversial, good or bad. It was a point of contention. The ass out pants, good or bad. It was a very much a moment where it's like, wow, okay, but it worked in his favor for that. Was like, wow.
So, and do you feel the same about the furry boots and the Welcome to America tour? Are you okay with them? The white furry boots?
So I never at that point it was already, I was so used to it. Like I didn't even think, I didn't question that. That's nothing to me. That's light work.
Nah, that's
That's the
Tuesday
least of
night.
what
That's
this is a
Tuesday
man
night.
who's had his ass out on stage
Yeah, you get away
multiple
with it like that.
times. So furry boots. That's he's being nice. Like, but he was tearing up the bass. So
Oh yeah, the bases.
I
Yeah,
had to let
yeah,
that go. But yeah, I mean, yeah, he's always had controversial moments, man. And some that he addresses, some he doesn't. The Hello song,
yeah,
he touches on the whole thing with Wally and them and the photographer,
yeah.
that whole thing. So there's always been little things. I mean, I guess you can argue the controversy album, like he addresses, like, I know what y'all saying about me. No, I'm not gay. So but he never doesn't, like, he does address it when he wants to. He plays into, I mean, he has a whole album called Controversy, right? Very early on in his career. And the controversy was him and how he was being perceived. So he already was playing with, yeah, I see what y'all talking about. I'm not afraid, I'll make a
Yeah,
whole
well, you said
movement
it.
based off
You
of
said it earlier, didn't you? You said it's like he was a way of saying, "Pay attention to me," and he was very good at changing
absolutely.
the conversation.
Absolutely. He knew how to push the buttons, yeah, I mean, we don't think about it now, but remember the sign, going back to Sign of the Times, and I know
The
talk
cat
about
cover.
yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah,
intentionally like, yeah, I'm gonna play with these people. Like, watch what they say, Look at
yeah,
this.
and yeah.
Yeah.
Cat talked about that as well in the book, and that dress was meant for, I think it was a Susanna, and yeah, it's like he asked her a size, and I think Prince's dad thought it was him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which is hilarious.
It's wild stuff. I mean, if somebody did that today, it would definitely be talked about, where you didn't know if it was the dude. It would almost play into today if he did it today. Like,
Yeah,
you'd
yeah.
almost expect an artist to do that. But back in what,
80,
87?
87, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, what are you doing?
But if I was your girlfriend as well, and but
Well, that
again,
whole project would have been, yeah.
but what I love about If I Was Your Girlfriend is, I'm sorry if I'm running over, but
No.
like, you look at the Dirty Mind and the way he wrote about, he sang about what we could call, like, racy stuff, and he was sort of looking to shock. But if I was your girlfriend, he's kind of looking to share by that point. He's actually just, it's a much more emotionally mature individual.
Yes. And I was playing this song a couple weeks ago, and I had this thought. As much as we frame that song and that sort of thing, I listen to that song now, and when I look at him when he performs it, to me, the song is really, and y'all can hate me for it, to me, it's more so of a pimp talking to a woman. He is trying to convince, because the stuff he's saying is very similar to the wordings that, if you ever seen the movie The Mac, and the character Goldie, he says some of the same things. He also says some of the same things that you hear in I Want to Be Your Lover. I want to be your mother, I want to be your father. And to me, when I look at Prince, when he sings the song live, there's no question it's a man singing to a woman, like the way he sings it, right? But to me, he's just talking that real slick talk where he's just spitting at a female, trying to really like be real cool with it. Like, girl, if you love me as much as you love your home girl, you let me do this. I don't really read him playing any gender type roles. I just need him as a man who's really talking slick to a female, and it's just done to funk track and its sly influence. But I just feel like he's really just talking real slick talking, and he's just trying to seduce her in the way that Prince does. That's how I listen to the song now.
Yeah, but this is what I love about it. And this is what I had to be careful with the book, because it was like, when I did stick my opinion in, I hope it was done
Sure.
lightly. I hope it was done lightly because, as I said, there's lots of other people giving their opinion about him. But when I hear that song, I hear, and the timings, we can look at the timings, and, people at Prince Vault would probably give us the exact timings of when he was in the studio of it. And, I need to look at it in the Benoit Clark book or the Prince Vault that's in front of me, 2 feet away. But he's in the middle of a really intense relationship with someone who is an identical twin.
Sure.
And he's arguably in the middle of breaking up with her. He's already broken up with her, the bandmates, one of whom is, her twin sister. And he's saying to a woman, why can I not have a level of closeness with you that you might have with another woman? And he's the son of an he's the son of a twin. And
Right.
so I hear that when I hear the song.
I see that.
And but that doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong. It's all about.
Oh no, we're just giving our yeah.
But I hear that.
When I hear these things about the Susanna and stuff too, and salute to Susanna and everybody.
Absolutely.
But also this is also the same. She ain't the only one. As much as you would seem like he's in a relationship, but let's keep it a buck. Like there are other people that he's saying similar things to at the same time.
Yeah, again, one of the things that we discuss the royal we, but it's that I try to be very clear about the fact it's a fool's game to sort of say, like people love with Beatles songs or Dylan songs where they go like, they sort of go with the Dylan song and that's about Sarah Lowndes, or that's about Joan Baez, or like the John Lennon song. There was a 40-year campaign to find out who Norwegian Wood was about. But most of the John and Paul songs you can kind of figure out who they're about. But with Prince, even the love songs, I think you can times you can guess that a few are about Susanna, but we can't prove it. And he would certainly never. It was not his style to clear things up like that. It was never his style. Like when Noel Gallagher wrote Wonderwall, like they kind of got him to admit that it wasn't about his wife at the time. He sort of said, "I know it sounds," but it wasn't. It was just about a random woman I was talking to.
Oh, wow.
Or it was about, I think, partly George Harrison. I can't remember now, but he sort of said, "This is not about my wife." Whereas Prince would not clear things up like that. Prince would never say, "Let me tell you, this is about Susanna. This is about Jill Jones. This is," whose strange relationship about? You tell me.
Yeah, good question. Good question. Well, he was good at telling you it wasn't about you. That's what he was good about saying. Like, just know it wasn't about you.
Yeah, there was well, it's that line, isn't it? To get a kick out you doing cold. I mean, it wasn't just because he was from Minneapolis, where it snows. There was a coolness there sometimes, and I got fascinated by that. He moved on, and that takes
Very true.
that takes bravery, but it also takes, you know, you have to be quite clinical to that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. We're about to get up out of here. John, thank you so much. And we're, like I said, you're over in London. I'm here in Seattle. What time is it where you're at right now?
It's just after 10 o'clock. So yeah,
PM at night.
Yeah, in the PM. Yeah, in the PM.
And it's
yeah.
2 o'clock over here in the afternoon. It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, but you got me to geek out about Prince, and what can I tell you? Yeah, I can. I'm gonna stop now.
Thank you so much. Again, go check out his book, Prince, A Sign of the Times. It is out now. Can you hold that up? Because it was actually, I read the Kindle version, or electronic version.
Yeah, you one. Just to say, if you're in the States, it's 534 pages. And there's lovely pictures inside. One of the things I love is that the guy that directed the original sketches for the 1975 Chanhassen Dinner Theatre production of Guys and Dolls that led to the actual backdrop of the Sign of the Times sleeve and the Sign of the Times tour. He's given me those sketches, so they're in the book. And like some of the wardrobe design. So you didn't get them in the PDF.
Yeah, I didn't see. Yeah.
So,
okay.
The problem is, I think your president means that exports are a problem to the States. But if you can buy it online, let me know, because it might take a while. Or if you want to push for a US publisher to run it, then please, you know, Prince fans do that, because I do think it's if I may be so bold, I don't think there's other Prince books like it on the market. You know, I think I tried to do something that really honored him as best as I could, and as much of a 360 on Prince as I could. But yeah, so there's a lot there.
Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna get the hardcover for sure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please let John know you like the book, or if you didn't like him, let him know with some respect. You know what you thought of the book. Either way, please go get it first, though. You got to go get it to read it to know if you like it or not, and it's definitely worth the read. No bullshit. Definitely is good stuff. John, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Is there a place they can find you online?
Yeah, it's John McKie, GOHNMCKIE. I'm on X and I'm on LinkedIn, I think, and Instagram and Facebook, and yeah. So yeah, but I mean, yeah, the book is the best place to find me, and yeah, do let me know what you think, and if you don't like it, I will understand, but be gentle, because it was 5.5 years of my life.
Oof. Yeah, that's a lot of work. All right, ladies and gentlemen, work it like a job. We'll see you next time. Peace.